Danny Mitchell wiped down the last table in his section and checked his watch. 6 hours into his shift and everything had gone perfectly. Not a single mistake, not one broken rule. That was how you survived working for the Vexari. The celestial crown space station floated in orbit around Zenthar Prime, a massive structure of gleaming metal and crystal that housed the most expensive restaurants and hotels in the galaxy. Danny had been working here for 6 months, serving alien guests in the Azure dining hall. The pay was incredible, enough to finally help his sister back on Earth with her medical bills. But the cost was steep in other ways. The Vexari were insectoid creatures, tall and thin, with clicking mandibles and compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. They ran the hospitality industry across dozens of star systems, famous for their perfect service. But perfect meant something different to them. It meant following every rule, every protocol, every tiny procedure without question or deviation. It meant never showing emotion, never rushing, never breaking the careful choreography of service. Danny had struggled with this from day one. He was human, and humans were not made for such rigid control. They felt things too strongly, acted too quickly, cared too much about the wrong things. At least that was what his manager Crickstar told him every time Danny came close to stepping out of line. The dining hall was beautiful in a cold sort of way. The floor was made of some kind of crystal that showed the stars below. The tables were arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Soft music played from hidden speakers, alien melodies that Danny still could not quite understand. Tonight, the restaurant was full of important guests from across the galaxy. Lisa Perry, another human server, passed by with a tray of drinks balanced perfectly on one hand. She gave Danny a quick look that meant be careful. Last week, Danny had moved too fast through the dining room and nearly got written up. Lisa had warned him then that one more mistake and he would be gone. She had been working here for a year and knew how things worked. There were only 12 humans on the entire station, all of them working in service positions. The Vexari hired them because humans were cheap labor compared to other species, but they made it clear that humans were barely acceptable, too emotional, too unpredictable, too likely to cause problems. Danny looked around his section. A group of Krillian diplomats sat at table 7, their slug-like bodies resting on specially designed chairs. They were important guests, the kind that could get you fired just by complaining about the temperature of their soup. Danny had served them perfectly all evening, staying exactly the right distance away, speaking only when spoken to, moving with the slow grace that Vexari protocol demanded. At table 9, a Tyrillian family was finishing their meal. The parents were reptilian creatures with green scales and long tails. Their baby sat in a hover seat between them, making small chirping sounds. Tyrillians were one of the few species whose young could eat solid food from birth, though their throat structure was delicate. Danny was not assigned to that table. It was in Sector 3 and he worked Sector 2. The Vexari were very clear about this. You stayed in your sector. You never crossed into another server's area. You never helped another server unless specifically told to do so. Everything had its place and its order. Manager Crickstar stood near the entrance, his compound eyes scanning the room constantly. He was watching for any imperfection, any break in the smooth operation of his dining hall. Danny had learned to feel the weight of that gaze, the constant pressure to be flawless. The evening continued in its careful rhythm. Danny brought water to table 4, cleared plates from table 6, answered questions from table 8 using the exact phrases from the training manual. Every movement was measured, every word was chosen. This was how you survived. This was how you kept a job that paid enough to save your family. But Danny hated it. He hated the coldness of it all, the way they treated service like a machine that should never feel or think. He hated bowing to guests who were cruel, smiling at those who were rude, pretending that perfect silence was the same as respect. Back on Earth, service meant taking care of people, anticipating their needs, connecting with them. Here it meant becoming invisible, a shadow that moved through the room without disturbing anything. His feet hurt, and his back ached from maintaining the perfect posture Crickstar demanded. His face felt frozen from keeping the neutral expression that was required at all times. But the money was good. The money was so good. Another 6 months and his sister would be out of debt. Another year and maybe he could go home and find real work. Human work where he could be himself again. The Krillian diplomats called for their check. Danny processed their payment with careful precision, thanking them in their own language as the training had taught him. They left without acknowledging him, which was normal. He cleared their table, reset it for the next guests, and returned to his position near the wall. That was when he heard the sound. It was soft at first, a kind of choking gasp that cut through the gentle music. Danny looked toward table 9, the Tyrillian family. The baby was making a strange noise, its small body jerking. The parents were leaning in, their faces showing concern but not alarm. In their culture, asking for help was seen as weakness. They were trying to handle it themselves. Danny watched as the baby's scales began to change color, shifting from healthy green to a pale blue. His training had covered this. Blue meant oxygen deprivation. Blue meant the baby could not breathe. The parents were patting its back gently, but it was not working. The baby was choking on something, and they did not know what to do. Danny's heart began to race. He looked at Krikstar, who had not yet noticed the problem. He looked at the medical alert button on the wall, the one they were supposed to press in emergencies. The medical team was 3 levels away, 5 minutes minimum response time. He looked back at the baby, whose scales were turning darker blue. The next moment stretched out forever in Danny's mind. He stood frozen at his post, holding an empty tray, watching a baby die in slow motion. Every piece of his training screamed at him to follow protocol. Press the medical alert button. Stay in your assigned sector. Do not cause a disturbance. Let the professionals handle it. Never touch a guest without permission. But another voice, deeper and older, spoke louder. That voice came from something more basic than training, more fundamental than rules. It came from the part of him that was human, the part that could not watch a child suffocate while he stood by and did nothing. Danny set down his tray. The sound of it touching the service station seemed unnaturally loud. He did not press the medical alert button. He did not call for Krikstar. He did not follow any of the procedures that would have kept him safe and employed. He ran. 3 steps took him out of Sector 2. 6 steps took him past Lisa, who turned with wide eyes. 9 steps brought him to table 9, where the Tyrillian parents were now in full panic, their scales rippling with distress. The baby's color was dark blue now, almost purple. Its eyes were rolling back. Danny reached for the child without asking permission. The mother made a sound of protest but did not stop him. He lifted the small reptilian infant from its hover seat, feeling how light it was, how fragile. Its body was cool to the touch, cooler than it should be. He had studied xenobiology in the mandatory training, boring sessions that most servers slept through. But Danny had paid attention because he was curious about the different species, about how their bodies worked. He remembered the section on Tyrillian physiology, how their esophagus curved differently than humans, how their lung structure was more delicate. Danny turned the baby around and positioned it against his chest. He could not do a standard Heimlich maneuver. The pressure point was different, lower on the torso. He placed his fist just below the rib cage equivalent and pulled up sharply. Nothing happened. The baby's body went limp in his arms. He adjusted his position, remembering the diagram from training. The compression had to be angled upward and to the right because of how Tyrillian organs were arranged. He tried again, pulling with controlled force. Still nothing. The dining hall had gone quiet. Every guest was watching now. Krikstar was moving toward them, his mandibles clicking in fury. Lisa had covered her mouth with her hands. The Krillian diplomats who had just left were standing in the doorway, watching the scene with disapproval. Danny ignored them all. He focused on the small life in his hands, on the absolute necessity of the next few seconds. He positioned his hands one more time, felt for the right spot and pulled up hard. Something flew out of the baby's mouth, a piece of food that skittered across the crystal floor. The baby gasped, a horrible rattling sound that was the most beautiful thing Danny had ever heard. Air rushed into its lungs. Its scales began to change, the blue fading back to green. The baby started to cry, loud wailing sobs that shattered the careful silence of the azure dining hall. The mother snatched her child from Danny's arms, clutching it to her chest. The father was making a keening sound, a Tyrillian expression of relief. Tears were streaming down both of their reptilian faces. Danny stepped back, his hands shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The baby was crying, which meant it was breathing, which meant it was alive. For 3 heartbeats he felt pure joy. Then reality crashed in. Krikstar reached him, his compound eyes reflecting Danny's image 100 times over. The manager's voice was cold and sharp. Office, now. Danny looked around the dining hall. 47 guests stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. The careful atmosphere had been destroyed. The perfect choreography was ruined. Servers stood frozen at their stations, unsure what to do. The gentle music still played, but it seemed wrong now, discordant against the crying baby and whispered conversations. Lisa caught his eye. She looked terrified for him, but also something else. Admiration, maybe. Or pity. The Tyrillian father tried to speak, reaching for Danny's arm. "You saved, you helped, we owe—" Krikstar cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Sir, please accept our apologies for this disturbance. Your meal is complimentary. A proper medical team will check your offspring. This employee is being removed from the floor immediately." Danny walked toward the office, his legs feeling strange and distant. Behind him, he heard the medical team arriving, too late to help but in time to file a report. He heard guests talking in various languages, some angry, some confused. He heard Lisa trying to calm down her section, her voice tight with worry. The office was small and cold. Krikstar closed the door and stood in front of it, blocking any escape. For a long moment, he just stared at Danny with those unreadable insect eyes. "Explain yourself," Krikstar finally said. Danny took a breath. The baby was choking. It was dying. "I saved its life and you broke protocol. The protocol would have killed that child." The medical team was 5 minutes away. That baby had seconds. Krikstar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "You left your assigned sector without permission. You touched a guest without authorization. You created a major disturbance in the dining hall. You did not alert the medical team through proper channels. You took actions beyond your training and authority." "I saved a life," Danny repeated. "You disrupted service for 47 guests. The Krillian diplomats have already filed a complaint. 3 other parties have requested compensation for the disturbed atmosphere. You have damaged the reputation of this establishment." Danny felt anger rising in his chest. "A baby would be dead right now if I had followed your rules." "The medical team would have arrived in time." "No, they would not have. That baby would be brain damaged or dead. I studied the response times. I studied Tyrillian physiology. There was no time." Krikstar moved closer. "You are human, so you do not understand. Service is not about feelings or instincts. It is about order, about reliability, about ensuring every guest has a perfect experience. When you break protocol, you introduce chaos. Chaos destroys everything we have built. Your protocol nearly killed a child. My protocol has served millions of guests across hundreds of stations for decades without flaw. Your emotional outburst disrupted that perfection." Danny realized with sinking certainty where this was going. "You're firing me. Your contract is terminated effective immediately. You will be confined to staff quarters until transport to Earth can be arranged in 3 days. This incident will be filed with the Galactic Service Guild. You may find it difficult to secure employment and hospitality anywhere in known space." The words hit like physical blows. 3 days. After 6 months of perfect service, of biting his tongue and following every rule, it was over. The money he needed, gone. His sister's medical bills, unpayable. His future blacklisted across the galaxy. "I would do it again," Danny said quietly. Krikstar tilted his head, a gesture of incomprehension. "That is why you are human. That is why you will always be unfit for true service. You are dismissed." Danny sat on the narrow bed in his quarters and stared at the gray walls. The room was tiny, just big enough for a bed, a small desk, and a bathroom. For 6 months it had been his prison, and now it would be his cell for 3 more days. He had sent a message to his sister. There was no way to soften the news. He was fired, he was blacklisted. He would not be able to send more money. She had replied within an hour, her message full of love and support and worry that made his chest ache. She told him not to worry about her, that they would find another way, that she was proud of him for doing the right thing. But Danny knew the truth. There was no other way. The treatment she needed cost more than any job on Earth would pay. He had counted on this position, on the massive salary that made every day of bowing and silence worthwhile. Now that was gone. A soft knock came at his door. Danny opened it to find Lisa standing in the hallway. She glanced around nervously before stepping inside. "You should not be here," Danny said. "If Krikstar finds out you visited me, he might fire you too." Lisa sat down at the desk, her shoulders slumped. "I know, but I could not just leave you alone." She was quiet for a moment, then added, "That was the bravest thing I ever saw. Or the stupidest. Maybe both." Lisa smiled sadly. Everyone is talking about it. The other humans, I mean. Half of them think you were crazy to throw away this job. The other half wish they had your courage, or what do you think? Lisa was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I think you did what I could never do. I have a son back on Earth. He has a condition that requires constant treatment. This job is the only way I can afford to keep him alive. So when I see something wrong, when I see the Vexari treating us like machines or guests being cruel or rules that do not make sense, I stay quiet. I follow protocol. I keep my head down. That is not wrong, Danny said. You have a child to protect, I know. But watching you run across that dining hall, seeing you save that baby, it made me realize something. I have been telling myself that I am being responsible, being smart, being a good mother, but maybe I am just being a coward. Lisa, do not say that. You are doing what you have to do. I do not have anyone depending on me except my sister, and she is an adult. You have a child. That is different, Lisa wiped her eyes. I wish I could stand up for you. I wish I could march into Krickstar's office and tell him he is wrong. But I cannot risk it. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Just keep your job and take care of your son. After Lisa left, Danny lay on his bed and tried to process everything. In a few days, he would be on a transport back to Earth. Back to a planet where he had no prospects and no way to help his family. The Galactic Service Guild would spread the word about his termination. No reputable establishment would hire him, but as he replayed the moment in his mind, the feel of that baby in his arms, the sound of it gasping for air and then crying, he could not bring himself to regret it. Krickstar was right about one thing. If the same situation happened again, Danny would make the same choice. His door chimed. This time it was a delivery drone carrying a message tablet. Danny took it and read the screen. The message was from the Tyrillian family. It was written in broken standard, clearly translated from their native language. Danny Mitchell, you saved our son. In our culture, this creates a life debt that can never be repaid. But we will try. We are telling everyone what happened. We are telling the truth. You are a hero. Do not let them say otherwise. Danny set down the tablet and closed his eyes. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like an unemployed human who had just destroyed his own future. But somewhere in the galaxy, a Tyrillian baby was alive and breathing. Maybe that had to be enough. News traveled fast on a space station. By the next morning, everyone knew what had happened. The story spread through the staff quarters, through the guest levels, through the docking bays where ships came and went. Danny stayed in his room as ordered, but his tablet kept chiming with messages. Some were from humans he barely knew, offering support or criticism. Others were from guests he had served, species he had never expected to hear from. But the real storm was brewing outside the station. Helen Brooks, a human journalist staying at the Celestial Crown, had heard about the incident. She contacted Danny through the station's message system, requesting an interview. Danny had nothing to lose. He agreed. Helen was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a recording device that she set up in his tiny quarters. Tell me everything, she said, so Danny did. He talked about the choking baby, the impossible choice, the termination. He talked about the Vexari philosophy of perfect protocol, about how humans struggled to fit into a system that valued order over everything else. He did not hold back, did not soften his words. What was the point? He was already blacklisted. Helen recorded it all. This is important, she said when he finished. This is not just about you. This is about how humans are treated in galactic society, about whether our values matter or if we should just become machines to fit in. I just wanted to save a baby, Danny said tiredly. I know, but sometimes one moment can become something bigger. Helen packed up her equipment. I am uploading this tonight. It will hit the Terran News Network and spread from there. I hope you are ready. Ready for what? For humans to finally get angry. Helen was right. The interview went viral across human space within hours. Earth, Mars, the colony worlds, the orbital stations, every place humans lived. They watched Danny tell his story. They watched him explain how he had been fired for saving a life, how the Vexari valued protocol over a baby's breath. The reaction was explosive. Social media channels erupted with outrage. Human rights groups organized protests at Vexari establishments on Earth. Businesses owned by humans began canceling contracts with Vexari corporations. A hashtag started trending. Protocols errant morals. Back on the Celestial Crown, The other human employees felt the pressure. Guests stared at them differently now, some with curiosity, others with disdain. The Vexari managers watched them more closely, waiting for another outburst. Lisa came to Danny's quarters again, looking stressed. 3 of the humans are talking about quitting. They say if this is how the Vexari treat us, they do not want to work here anymore. They should not quit because of me, Danny said. It is not just because of you. It is because your story made them realize what they have been accepting. One of them, Carl Baker, he said he has been pretending to be something he is not for 2 years. He said watching you made him remember what it means to be human. Being human does not pay the bills. No, but neither does hating yourself. The Tyrillian family, true to their word, was telling everyone what had happened. They stopped guests in the hallways, sent messages to their government, posted on galactic social networks. In Tyrillian culture, a life debt was sacred. They would not stay silent. Other species began to pay attention. The Havani, a species that valued family above all else, heard the story and were disturbed. How could anyone punish someone for saving a child? The Torsken Collective, known for their logical approach to everything, ran simulations. They concluded that Danny's actions had a 94% success rate compared to waiting for the medical team, which would have had only a 43% chance of saving the baby in time. But not every species agreed. The Meridians, who valued order and structure, supported the Vexari decision. The Krillians filed formal complaints, saying that the dining hall disturbance had ruined their diplomatic dinner. Several other species issued statements defending protocol-based service. The galaxy was divided, and Danny Mitchell was at the center of it. The Galactic Service Guild called an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. They were a multi-species organization that set standards for hospitality work across known space. Now they were facing a crisis. Human members were resigning in protest. Vexari members were demanding stronger enforcement of protocols. Other species were caught in the middle, unsure which side to support. On the Celestial Crown, Krikstar was dealing with a disaster. Human guests were requesting refunds and leaving early. Some alien guests were specifically asking for human servers, curious about these beings who would risk everything to help a stranger. Revenue was down. Complaints were up. Corporate headquarters was sending angry messages every hour. The Vexari released an official statement defending their decision. They explained their philosophy, their belief in order and reliability. They said that emotional decision-making led to chaos, that rules existed for good reasons, that Danny Mitchell had violated his contract and endangered their reputation. The statement made things worse. Humans saw it as cold and heartless. Even some alien species found it too harsh. The Havani Consortium issued a counter-statement saying that any society that would punish someone for saving a child had lost its way. In his small quarters, Danny watched it all unfold on his tablet. He saw the protests, read the articles, watched the debates. He had not meant to start a galactic incident. He had just wanted to help a baby breathe, but Helen had been right. Sometimes one moment could become something bigger. Now the question was whether that bigger thing would mean anything or just fade away like everything else. The protests grew larger. On Earth, thousands of humans marched outside the Vexari corporate headquarters in New Geneva. They carried signs that read "Lives over Protocol" and "Humanity not Machinery." Similar demonstrations erupted on Mars, Europa Station, and the colony worlds of the outer systems. What surprised everyone was that some aliens joined the protests. A group of Havani arrived at one demonstration on Earth, their fur-covered bodies standing out among the humans. They held signs in their own language that translated to "family first." Always. A few young Torskens showed up at another protest, explaining to reporters that pure logic supported the human position, but there were counter-protests too. Meridian workers walked out of human-owned businesses, saying they could not work for species that did not respect order. Krillian diplomats recalled their ambassadors from several human worlds. The Vexari announced they were reviewing all human employment contracts across their properties. The galaxy had not been this divided over a cultural issue in decades. Governments were issuing statements. News networks were running constant coverage. Social philosophers were writing long essays about the fundamental differences between species and whether true integration was possible. On the Celestial Crown, the remaining human employees were caught in the middle. Some guests praised them, asking questions about human culture and values. Others treated them with open contempt. The Vexari managers watched them constantly, looking for any sign of rebellion. Carl Baker, one of the human servers, stopped by Danny's quarters. He was a young man with nervous energy, always moving. "I am leaving," he told Danny. "My contract has 2 months left, but I am buying my way out." "I cannot do this anymore, and where will you go?" Danny asked. "There is a human-owned station near the Centauri cluster. They are hiring. The pay is less, but at least I can be myself." Carl paused. "5 others are thinking about leaving too. Your story made us realize what we have been doing to ourselves, trying to be something we are not." After Carl left, Danny felt the weight of responsibility. These people were giving up good jobs because of him, because of what he had done. He wanted to tell them not to, that their families needed the money, that he was not worth following. But he also understood what Carl meant. There was a cost to betraying yourself every day, and sometimes that cost was too high. His tablet chimed with a new message. This one was from someone unexpected. A Vexari administrator from corporate headquarters wanted to speak with him via video call. Danny accepted the call. The Vexari on the screen was older than Krikstar, with darker carapace and more deliberate movements. "Danny Mitchell, I am Administrator Vexnal. I oversee operations for 17 stations, including the Celestial Crown." "I have already been fired," Danny said. "There is nothing else to discuss." "On the contrary, there is much to discuss. Your actions have created significant problems for our organization. Stock prices have fallen. We have lost major contracts. Human employees are resigning in unprecedented numbers. Then you should have thought about that before you fired me for saving a baby's life." Vexanal's mandibles clicked softly. "You misunderstand. I'm not here to argue our decision. I am here to understand why this has become such a significant incident. We have terminated employees before. We have had complaints, even protests, but never anything like this." Danny thought about how to explain it. "Because you proved what humans have been afraid of. That we do not fit in your galaxy, that our values are wrong, that our instincts are flaws, that we should be ashamed of what makes us human. Your species is emotional and unpredictable. This is fact, not judgment, maybe so. But we also save babies when protocols say to wait. We also break rules when rules are wrong. We also care about strangers for no logical reason. You can call that emotional and unpredictable, but we call it human. And we are tired of apologizing for it." Vexanal was quiet for a moment. "Your species is making this very difficult for integration. Integration should not mean erasing who we are." The call ended. Danny sat in the dark and wondered if he had just made things better or worse. The next day, the Galactic Service Guild announced they were holding a special tribunal to address the incident. Representatives from dozens of species would attend. Danny was invited to testify, as were Krikstar and the Tyrillian family. The tribunal would take place in 1 week, on the neutral ground of Orion Station. It would be broadcast across the galaxy. The decision would set precedent for how humans were treated in service industries galaxy-wide. Danny received a message from a human lawyer offering to represent him for free. Her name was Patricia Cole, and she specialized in interspecies employment law. "This is bigger than your job," she told him in a video call. "This is about whether humans have to give up their humanity to work in the galaxy." "I just want to go home," Danny said. "I know. But right now you are the voice of every human who has been told they are too emotional, too irrational, too human. Will you speak for them?" Danny thought about his sister, about Lisa and her son, about Carl and the others who were leaving their jobs. He thought about the baby who was alive because he had broken the rules. Orion Station was neutral territory, a massive structure jointly operated by the Galactic Council. It was where species came to settle disputes, negotiate treaties, and handle matters that affected multiple worlds. Danny had never been anywhere so impressive or intimidating. Patricia Cole met him at the docking bay. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp professional clothing. "The tribunal is in 2 hours. We need to prepare." They went to a conference room where Patricia laid out her strategy. "The Vexari will argue that you violated clear protocols and that your termination was justified under galactic employment law. We will argue that the protocols themselves were flawed, and that your human values should be considered a legitimate approach to service." "Will that work?" Danny asked. "I do not know. The tribunal is made up of judges from 7 different species. Some will be sympathetic, others will not. We need to make them see that this is not about you breaking rules. It is about whether different species can bring different strengths to the galaxy. The tribunal chamber was circular with high ceilings. Seats rose in tiers around the central floor where Danny would testify. Cameras were positioned everywhere, broadcasting the proceedings to billions of beings across known space. The judges entered, a Havani with silver fur, a Torskan whose mechanical augments clicked softly, a Meridian whose scaled face showed no emotion, a human judge from Earth, and 3 others from species Danny did not recognize. Krixtar arrived with a team of Vexari lawyers. He did not look at Danny. The Tyrillian family came next, the father Kirik carrying his son. The baby looked healthy and happy, its green scales gleaming. The head judge, the Havani, called the session to order. We are here to address the termination of Danny Mitchell from the Celestial Crown and the larger questions this incident has raised about cultural differences in professional settings. The Vexari lawyer spoke first. She was calm and precise, laying out the case. Danny Mitchell signed a contract agreeing to specific protocols. He violated at least 7 major rules. He left his assigned sector, touched a guest without permission, created a disturbance, and failed to alert medical personnel through proper channels. His termination was justified and legal under his employment contract. Patricia stood to respond. The contract was legal, but the situation was not ordinary. Mr. Mitchell faced a choice between following protocol and saving a life. He chose life. The question before this tribunal is whether that choice should be punished or praised. The Vexari lawyer continued. Protocol exists for good reasons. If every employee made emotional decisions based on personal judgment, chaos would reign. The medical team would have arrived in time. Mr. Mitchell's actions were unnecessary and disruptive. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Kirik, the Tyrillian father, asked to testify. He approached the center of the chamber holding his son. Honorable judges, Kirik began, his voice shaking. I am Kirik of Tyrillia. This is my son, Vikit. 3 weeks ago, my son was dying. I watched him choke, watched his scales turn the color of death. My mate and I did not know how to save him. In my culture, asking for help is seen as weakness. We were failing him. Kirik paused, his emotion clear even across species lines. Then this human, this Danny Mitchell, ran to us. He did not ask permission. He did not follow rules. He simply saved my son's life. The Vexari say the medical team would have arrived in time. This is false. He pulled out a data tablet. After the incident, the station's medical facility ran a full analysis. My son would have suffered brain damage within 2 minutes and death within 4. The medical team's response time was logged at 5 minutes and 12 seconds. If Danny Mitchell had waited, my son would be dead or damaged forever. The chamber was silent. Kirik's voice grew stronger. In my culture, we have something called a life debt. When someone saves your family, you owe them everything. But more than this, you owe them truth. The truth is that Danny Mitchell is a hero. The truth is that his human instinct, his emotional response, his willingness to break rules, these things saved my son when protocol would have killed him. Then Kirik did something shocking. Tears began rolling down his reptilian face, and he did not wipe them away. In Tyrillian culture, public crying was deeply shameful. But Kirik stood before the galaxy and wept. These are what my people call truth tears, he said. I shame myself to tell the truth. Danny Mitchell should be honored, not punished. Any society that would fire someone for saving a child has lost its way. The impact was immediate. The human judge nodded vigorously. The Havani head judge's fur rippled with emotion. Even the Torskan, usually so logical, seemed moved. The Vexari lawyer tried to recover. We understand the family's gratitude, but individual cases cannot override established systems. If we allow emotion to dictate professional conduct, we undermine the foundations of reliable service. Patricia stood again. The Vexari keep talking about systems and protocols. But let me show you something. She pulled up data on the large screens around the chamber. I have researched every incident in the past 10 years where humans broke protocol in service positions. 83 documented cases across multiple establishments and species. She displayed the results. In 74 of those cases, the human was trying to help someone, saving a choking victim, preventing an accident, assisting someone in distress. Yes, they broke rules, but they did so because the rules failed to account for emergency situations. They did so because they valued life over order. Patricia looked at each judge. Humans are emotional. We are impulsive. We trust our instincts sometimes more than we should. But we also bring something valuable to the galaxy. We bring the willingness to act when action is needed. We bring compassion that sees a stranger's child as worth saving. We bring the courage to be wrong rather than do nothing. The Meridian Judge spoke for the first time, but this unpredictability makes humans dangerous in structured environments. How can we trust employees who might ignore rules at any moment? The human judge responded, "You cannot have it both ways. You cannot hire humans for their creativity and adaptability, and then punish them when those same traits lead them to save lives. Either accept that humans bring different values or stop employing us." The debate continued for hours. Judges asked questions. Lawyers argued. Experts on interspecies psychology testified. But through it all, Danny sat quietly, watching his life and his species' place in the galaxy being decided by others. Finally, the Hivani head judge called for a recess. "We will deliberate and return with a decision tomorrow." The galaxy waited. News networks ran constant coverage, analyzing every moment of the tribunal. On human worlds, people gathered in public spaces to watch. Debates raged across social media. Would the galaxy accept human values, or would they demand conformity? Danny spent the night in his quarters on Orion Station, unable to sleep. Patricia had told him not to hope for too much. The best they could expect was a ruling that said he had been within his rights to act, even if the Vexari had been within their rights to fire him. But something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. Stories began to surface, shared by members of various species. A Hivani grandmother posted about how a human medic had violated quarantine protocols during a colony plague to reach her grandchild, saving the child's life, but risking contamination. A Torskan engineer told of a human technician who had ignored safety regulations to prevent a reactor breach that would have killed dozens. More and more stories emerged. Humans breaking rules to help, to save, to protect. Each story sparked debate. Were humans dangerous rule breakers, or were they something the galaxy needed? The next morning, the tribunal reconvened. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Danny took his place in the center, his heart pounding. The Hivani head judge spoke. "This tribunal has reached a decision, though it was not unanimous. The questions before us were complex, touching on employment law, cultural differences, and the nature of service itself." She paused, looking around the chamber. First, regarding the specific case of Danny Mitchell, we find that he did violate the terms of his employment contract with the Celestial Crown. The Vexari were within their legal rights to terminate his employment. Danny's heart sank. He had expected this, but it still hurt. The judge continued. "However, we also find that Danny Mitchell's actions were morally justified and potentially life-saving. The medical analysis supports the conclusion that waiting for the medical team would likely have resulted in death or severe brain damage to the infant." She looked directly at Danny. "Therefore, while we cannot force the Celestial Crown to reinstate you, we rule that this incident should not be held against you in future employment. The Galactic Service Guild will not blacklist you, and any potential employer who discriminates against you based on this incident will face guild sanctions." It was something, at least. Danny would not be blacklisted. But he was still fired, still unemployed, still unable to help his sister. But the judge was not finished. Furthermore, this tribunal recognizes that the incident has revealed a larger issue. Humans are increasingly present in the galactic workforce, but they operate under different moral frameworks than many other species. This has created tension and misunderstanding. The Torskan judge took over. "After extensive analysis and debate, we propose a new classification for human workers. Effective immediately, humans may be designated as adaptive service personnel. This classification acknowledges that humans may deviate from standard protocols in emergency situations based on their species-specific moral imperatives," the Meridian judge added. "However, employers from species that prioritize protocol-based service, such as the Vexari, may choose whether to hire humans under these conditions. They may require that humans follow standard protocols, or they may accept the risks and benefits of adaptive service personnel. This is a voluntary arrangement." The Hivani head judge spoke again. "This decision satisfies no one completely, but it allows for coexistence. Humans can work in the galaxy without compromising their core values. Other species can maintain their service standards if they choose. It is a compromise, but sometimes compromise is the only path forward. She struck her gavel. This tribunal is concluded. The chamber erupted in noise. Reporters shouted questions. Supporters cheered. Critics argued. Danny sat in the center of it all, trying to process what had just happened. Patricia found him in the chaos. It is not perfect, but it is progress. You are not blacklisted. Humans have official recognition that their moral framework is different. This will make things easier for every human working in the galaxy. But I am still unemployed, Danny said quietly. Not for long. Patricia smiled. I have been getting calls all morning. There are dozens of establishments that want to hire you specifically. Human-owned businesses, certainly, but also some alien operations that see value in the human approach. Over the next few days, the offers poured in. A hospital ship that traveled to frontier colonies wanted human medical staff who would break rules to save lives. A search and rescue organization needed humans who would trust their instincts in emergencies. A diplomatic service wanted humans who could build emotional connections across species. But the offer that interested Danny most came from the Meridian Hope, a human-operated medical vessel. They offered him a position as a xenobiology specialist, teaching emergency response techniques for different species. The pay was good, not as high as the Celestial Crown, but enough. Enough to help his sister. Enough to live on. Enough to feel like he was doing something meaningful. 3 months later, Danny stood in the medical bay of the Meridian Hope, watching a young human doctor struggle with a patient. The patient was a Krillian child, injured in a mining accident on a frontier colony. The doctor was following the standard treatment protocol for Krillian physiology, but something was wrong. The child was not responding. Danny stepped forward. Try shifting the medication ratio. Krillians from the outer colonies have different metabolic rates than the standard medical database assumes. The doctor looked uncertain, but the protocol says. The protocol is based on Krillians from the core worlds. This child is from a colony. Trust your instincts and adapt. The doctor adjusted the treatment. Within minutes, the child stabilized. The young doctor looked at Danny with gratitude and relief. That is what we do, Danny told her. We learn the rules, we respect the knowledge, but we also trust ourselves to know when something is not working. That is what makes us human. The Meridian Hope traveled from colony to colony, providing medical care to places too remote for permanent facilities. The crew was mostly human, with a few aliens who appreciated the human approach to medicine. They broke protocols regularly, adapted treatments on the fly, and saved lives that the standard procedures would have lost. Danny found the work fulfilling in a way the Celestial Crown never was. Here he could be himself, could use his instincts, could help people without constantly worrying about violating some rule. He taught xenobiology to new crew members, sharing everything he had learned about different species and how to treat them. News from across the galaxy continued to filter in. The Vexari had not changed their core protocols, but they had added a new clause to their human employment contracts. If a situation arose that a human employee believed was immediately life-threatening, they could act first and justify later. It was a small change, but it was something. Some humans on the Celestial Crown had stayed, including Lisa. She sent Danny regular messages, telling him about her son's improving health and thanking him for inspiring her even though she had not been brave enough to follow him. Danny told her that staying took its own kind of courage, that taking care of her family was the right choice. 3 other humans from the Celestial Crown had quit and found work elsewhere. Carl Baker was serving on a human passenger liner, where guests appreciated his warmth and emotional engagement. 2 others had joined security forces that valued human unpredictability in dangerous situations. The tribunal's decision had rippled across the galaxy. More humans were finding work in fields that valued their unique approach. Some aliens were specifically hiring humans for positions that required quick thinking and emotional intelligence. Others avoided human employees entirely, preferring the predictability of protocol-based species. It was not perfect, but it was better. Humans had a place in the galaxy now, acknowledged as different but not wrong. One afternoon, Danny received a message that made him smile. It was a video from Kirik and his family on Terelia. The baby Vicket was now a healthy toddler, crawling around and making happy sounds. Kirik spoke in much better standard than before. Danny Mitchell, my son grows strong because of you. We have established a scholarship in your name for humans who wish to study xenomedicine. It is small repayment for the debt we owe, but we hope it helps others learn what you knew, that all life is valuable and worth saving. Danny watched the video 3 times, his chest tight with emotion. One moment, one choice had somehow led to this. A child alive, a scholarship created, a shift in how the galaxy saw humans. He thought about that moment in the Azure dining hall, when he had stood frozen between protocol and instinct. He thought about how easy it would have been to press the medical alert and wait, to follow the rules and keep his job. He would have been wrong, but he would have been safe. Safety had its price, though. The price was living with yourself afterward, knowing you had chosen order over life, knowing a child had died because you were afraid to break a rule. As the Meridian Hope continued its journey, Danny stood at the observation window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, other humans were making similar choices, breaking rules when rules failed, trusting themselves when the systems let them down. They would face consequences sometimes, criticism and conflict and cost, but they would also save lives, build connections, and remind the galaxy that emotions were not always weaknesses. Sometimes they were exactly what the universe needed. A call came over the intercom. Emergency in the cargo bay. A worker trapped under collapsed equipment. Danny grabbed the medical kit and ran, his training and instincts working together. He did not know if he would have to break any rules today. He did not know if his actions would cause problems or solve them. He only knew that someone needed help and he was human, and that meant he would try. As he ran through the corridors of the Meridian Hope, Danny understood something fundamental. Humanity's place in the galaxy was not built on superior technology or military strength. It was built on moments like these, on the willingness to act when action was needed, on the stubborn refusal to let protocols matter more than people. The galaxy had rules, systems, and order. It needed those things to function. But it also needed humans with all their chaos and emotion and impossible courage. It needed beings who would run toward danger, break rules for the right reasons, and choose compassion over convenience. Danny reached the cargo bay and saw the situation. The trapped worker was a young Torsken, her leg pinned under heavy containers. The standard procedure would be to wait for the engineering team with proper lifting equipment. That would take 20 minutes. The Torsken's vital signs were dropping. She had maybe 10 minutes. Danny looked at the heavy containers, at the Torsken's frightened face, at the timer counting down in his mind. He thought about everything that had happened, everything that had changed. Then he began giving orders to the crew around him, organizing an emergency lift using whatever they had available. It was not protocol, it was not safe according to regulations, but it was necessary. The Torsken was freed in 8 minutes. Her injuries were treatable. She would live. As the medical team stabilized her, the Torsken looked at Danny with her mechanical eyes. "You broke safety protocols," she said, her voice weak but certain. "Yes," Danny agreed. "Thank you," she said. And in that moment, on a medical ship traveling through the darkness between stars, Danny Mitchell understood that some things were more important than rules. Some choices defined not just individuals but entire species. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not by becoming like everyone else but by remaining stubbornly, impossibly, beautifully human. That was enough. That would always be enough.